Manhwa is often heavily compared to its Japanese counterpart in manga, and personally, I do think manhwa has a lot of things going for it when compared to manga. Things like the fact that it's coloured, the porn, the variety in art styles, the way that it's designed to be read on a phone. These are things that for me make the overall reading experience more enjoyable in comparison to your bog standard manga. But when comparing, it's hard not to compare the culture surrounding it too. Like in anime and manga, we have the big three in Naruto, Bleach and One Piece. But what about in manhwa? Well, manhwa does have its own big three in Noblesse, Tower of God and God of High School. And it's safe to say that Solo Leveling has definitely been put on a pedestal much like the manhwa big three. But I think that there's another series that belongs on a pedestal much like the aforementioned. So in this video I'm going to attempt to convince you that this atrocity of a cover actually represents one of the funniest, hypest, most wholesome manhwa that I've come across so far. And that it deserves a lot more recognition than it currently has. But first, let me paint you a picture. You know that satisfying feeling when you find a new anime, manga or manhwa? Almost as if you found a gem in a vast sea of degeneracy. It captivates you so much so that you think that it's a masterpiece that rivals the works of William fucking Shakespeare himself. So, you begin to dedicate every waking moment to it. Anything that's not a fictional reality that makes you go becomes a nuisance, because why go outside and touch grass when you could be watching or reading an absolute masterpiece of fiction? You shut yourself in, ignoring the irrelevant matters of the mere mortals surrounding you, as you begin to bathe in the content of your newfound form of entertainment. But before you know it, your hopes, dreams, and aspirations are suddenly crushed as you've either finished it, or worse, you're up to date. And now you have to painstakingly wait for the next episode or chapter to release, considering yourself lucky if it's a weekly series, and if not, holy shit, that sucks, man. But regardless, it hits you. You're unsure as to how much time has passed, and now you have to go outside. Now you have to go and interact with, people. You barely remember how to shower, let alone try to actively converse with another person. It doesn't matter if you were an introvert or an extrovert before this, because now, any ounce of confidence you once had in your social skills has now been replaced with crippling social anxiety. This is quite the predicament. So what's the solution? You can just find a new series to binge, lock yourself away, and start the process all over again. Hi, my name's Stop. I was going to make another joke like I did in my first video regarding my name, but it was going to be lame anyway, so you're not really missing out on much. But the date of recording this voiceover is the 19th of May 2025. And I started writing the script for this video back in May 2022. It's been 3 fucking years since I started writing this script. This video was meant to come out 1 month after my first video came out. So much time has passed that I've changed my fucking username. So you're probably asking, Lewis, or I guess Lickety now, what the fuck happened? And that, my good viewer, is a very fair question. So it was 2020 and my ex-girlfriend and I were in the latter stages of that, with Solo Leveling having caught up. And because we were up to date with the latest chapter, my ex-girlfriend, being an even bigger weeb than I, wanted more. So she scoured the interwebs, and that's when she came across a little something called Eleceed, and after binge reading it, recommended it to me. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty reluctant at first. Usually, I'm not one to judge a book by its cover, but well, I did just that. I mean, how the fuck could I not? Just look at it. Look at it! If BTS hired from looks alone, this is what the rejects would look like if they starred in their own fucking BL. But, I digress. Understandably, I put it off for a while though. Until I saw this. And this. And this. Yeah, call me easily impressed, because that's all it took for me to read the first couple of chapters, and well, I found myself pleasantly surprised. That's pretty neat. Not only because the actual artwork looks nothing like the cover, thank God, but because the story is one of the most wholesome and funniest things I've read in a very long time. Let me explain. The story follows 2 main characters, Jae-ho and Caden Break. We'll start with Caden, as he's the easiest to explain out of context. You see, Caden's one smug son of a bitch. And if you watched my last video, then you'll know exactly why I love smug looking sons of bitches. And if you haven't, then please do not watch it. It really did not age well. But yes, I love smug-looking sons of bitches, especially when they have every right to be so. Okay, so why does Kaden deserve to be so goddamn smug? Basically, in this world, Kaden is an electrokinetic that rivals that of the top 10 strongest awakened in the world. On top of that, he's an independent awakened, meaning that he's not affiliated with a country or an association, the latter of which I'll get into later. But I need to preface, this man is Luffy levels of OP and possesses pride rivaling that of fucking Escanor. Yes, I have wasted countless hours watching 7 Deadly Sins, fucking sue me. Not to mention, from looks alone, he has the ability to resurface the many deep-seated daddy issues that you probably have lying dormant. And it's because of this that Minnie sought his tutelage. Because of how OP he is, not the daddy issues part, okay?
The fuck is wrong with you?
But in light of this, he's shown to reject any and everyone because he believes that teaching others will only stunt his own growth. And, well, that's his end goal. To grow and become the strongest awakened in the world. But why, you ask? For his own fucking ego, what better reason do you need? Like, imagine becoming the strongest to finally put an end to a tyrannical empire. Fucking cringe. How about becoming stronger so you can fight even stronger opponents? How about becoming the strongest just to say that you're the strongest? Now you're speaking my fucking language. Are you starting to get what kind of person we're dealing with here? Alright, with Kaden finally out of the way, we can finally get started on the premise of the story, which will introduce Soji-Yu. In what is believed to be a normal world very much like ours, hidden from the public eye lies a group of people called the Awakened, who possess superpowers typical of that of Marvel or DC. They often tend to be affiliated with associations that help protect their respective countries' governments from foreign awakened threats. Our protagonist, Soji-Yu, is a 17-year-old who possesses the ability of super speed.
I'm fast as fuck, boy!
Unaware that there are others like him. You see, Ji-Yu spent the majority of his childhood friendless as he feared being ostracized for his power, which did happen multiple times, prompting his family to move in order to keep his ability a secret. But in doing so, further contributed to his isolation. Now, unlike Kaden, Ji-Yu isn't a cocky little shit. Quite the opposite, in fact. And it's shown straight off the bat that he's a humble, sweet, and kind-hearted individual who will use his powers to save the lives of others at the risk of his own. Or as the internet would call him, a soft boy. But him being the way he is kind of makes sense. I mean, he did have a pretty rough childhood. Like, imagine having spent the majority of your life in solitude, without any real friends to create and share memories with, all because you're afraid they won't like the real you. Just as your parents told you about the kid next door, he was just different. But in spite of all of this, or maybe even because of all of this, he developed a kind and loving heart. Combined with his isolation and lack of general social skills, up until now he lived a very quiet life, which led him to develop the hobby of feeding stray cats around his neighborhood. This is relevant, just bear with me, but damn, that boy's the pussy whisperer! Sorry. So, the story starts off with Ji-Yu on his way back from school, having stopped at the local convenience store to pick up some cat food for, you know, his pussies. As he's leaving the store, it's here we're introduced to Ji-Yu's super speed, as he's shown saving a kid from becoming another generic isekai protagonist, to then walk off like the cutest fucking Chad you've ever seen. I mean, just look at him.
Don't you want to pinch his cheeks? He's just so cute.
Anyway, once home, the strays he feeds at home lead him to the body of an injured and bloodied cat. And if he wasn't already top contender for best boy in all of Manhwa, he brings the cat back home to nurse it back to health. And after the cat wakes up, Ji-Yu feeds him and tries to sneak a peek at the cat's junk. Still relevant, by the way. The cat freaks the fuck out. And it's revealed that, hey, that cat can talk. Why? Well, big surprise, the cat is not a cat, it's Kaden fucking Break. That's right, these two are the fucking same. He briefly explains that he was attacked and that he used his powers to transfer his mind and body into a random stray cat nearby to evade his attackers. And while he explains all of this, he quickly learns that Ji-Yu is completely oblivious to his own awakened nature. And, against his own principles, reluctantly begins to train Ji-Yu to strengthen his powers and learn what it means to be an awakened. Now, I cannot sing my praises for this manhwa enough, but that wasn't always the case. For example, the art style. Overall, the art definitely gives off some type of BL or yaoi vibe, which I've never really been into, but over time, whether it's grown on me or I've just gotten used to it, I can't really tell. Either way, it didn't really matter much because I was lucky enough not to start reading Eleceed from the beginning of its serialization. And since I binge read the first 150 chapters, I got to see the art style evolve and find its groove relatively quickly. As the series goes on, the art direction becomes more consistent, with polished and more consistent character designs that show just how much Zhena's art style has come into its own. And let me tell you, it only gets better the deeper you dive into the series. Despite my initial gripes with Eleceed's early artwork, there are gems like these. Sure, they're just facial expressions, but Eleceed has taught me just how much I value a good smirk or grimace. And as far as facial expressions go, he's literally the Anya of Manhwa. The artist does such a good job at expressing characters' emotions in a way that's both relatable and comedic, very much like Spy Family. A big reason for why no one shut up about Spy Family when it was out was because of Anya and her cute and relatable expressions. Seeing these sides of characters, you can't help but feel more connected and immersed with them in the world. Speaking of characters, we also see the mentor-mentee relationship between Kaden and Ji-yu blossom, resulting in both of them opening up and growing as people. Kaden, a stubborn, self-centered egoist, begins to care for someone other than himself. And Ji-yu, a quiet and unconfident high school boy, begins to finally come out of his shell and starts to develop some self-confidence and self-worth. Moreover, as we follow Ji-yu on this journey, we get to see him overcome obstacles that he would once never have even dreamed of overcoming before, and begins to make friends out of the unlikeliest of people. It's the chemistry that Ji-yu has with these friends that we meet that really does make this manhwa so fucking wholesome. We first meet Uin, a telekinetic who at first is introduced to us as an antagonist, but we soon find out he's just as misunderstood as Ji-yu. And because of his upbringing, he believed what he was doing was right. And after the confrontation subsides, he becomes Ji-yu's first ever friend. As we begin to get to know Uin, we find out just how similar he is to Ji-yu, as it's shown that he's just as gentle and reserved, with the exception of being a lot quieter than our protagonist. Then we're introduced to Ji-suk, my ball. I really need to stop. Ji-suk is the tall, handsome, hot-headed delinquent that actually looks like he belongs in BTS. He's also the younger brother of Ji-young, the head of the Shinhwa Association and Korea's strongest awakened. An extremely powerful aerokinetic, much like his sister. Despite the trope he falls into, Ji-suk doesn't care much for picking on others, but is indirectly responsible for the abuse that Ji-yu had to endure, as Ji-suk's quote-unquote friends used his name to extort Ji-yu and plenty of other students out of their lunch money. With Ji-suk's sister finding out that Ji-yu and Uin are fellow awakened, she scouts them as potential representatives under the Shinhwa Association, and as you may expect from the handsome hothead, Ji-suk was having none of it. So he decides to spar with Ji-yu to, well, put him in his place. But thanks to Ji-yu, using what can only really be described as a cheese strat, he comes out on top after catching Ji-suk off guard. But due to the injuries that both of them sustained during the fight, the sparring match was called off. And although it may not be obvious at first, this results in Ji-suk beginning to respect Ji-yu. Not only for his strength, but also as a friend, as it's later shown that Ji-yu stands up for him against his former friends when they badmouth Ji-suk. And in typical tsundere fashion, he begins to hang out with Ji-yu and Uin, but never admits to actually enjoying their company, instead acting like he's there reluctantly. And then we're introduced to the resident Hinedere, a cryokinetic by the name of Lee Subin. Subin is the granddaughter of the head of the Awakened Union, basically the Awakened Police of Korea. A year older than the trio, Subin is a short-tempered and edgy lass who I definitely don't want to step on me. Her short-tempered nature is portrayed quite frequently, as Ji-suk finds amusement in pissing her off all the time, and not in a flirty way, I think. Subin's introduced to us as more of a rival rather than a member of the main cast. That's obviously me foreshadowing that over time, that changes. Up until about chapter 300, we don't really know Subin. Like, yeah, she's there, and she's kind of cold, but that's about it. But upon the arrival of chapter 300, Subin begins a swift but halted character arc, which definitely makes you empathize more with her. But as it seems incomplete, that's all I'll say for now. Take note that, although later on all of them find out that Kaden's Ji-yu's mentor, none of them know that Kaden is that chunky ass cat. Which, by the way, Ji-yu has named Casein Nitrate, because that sounds nothing like Kaden. Although later, Ji-suk catches on. Not that the cat is Kaden, but that Casey Nitrate is an extremely overpowered cat. And as a result, Jisuk begins to worship the cat as if it was some kind of god. So in anime terms, we have one soft boy, one dandere, one tsundere, and one hinadere. If that isn't a recipe for some wholesome shenanigans, then I don't know what the fuck is. But what I do know is that this series deserves to be put on a pedestal and to be worshipped just as much as Solo Leveling. Now, I've talked about wish fulfillment in my last video, but boy, does that shit apply to this series too. There are countless times when you want something badass to happen, and it does, leaving you like... Everything that it does, from the wholesome to the OP moments, is just in a class that is comparable to Solo Leveling, in my opinion. It reminds me of when I first got into 7 Deadly Sins. I, like most weebs, got into 7 Deadly Sins because I watched a clip of Escanor on YouTube. So you can imagine my disappointment when I found out that he's just not in Season 1. Like, can you imagine how disappointed I was, expecting to see Escanor, but all I fucking got was a relatively OP half-man molesting this poor innocent girl, which, by the way, why is she so okay with this? Like, so what if you were lovers in the past life? Is this not a criminal fucking event still? Like, what? What was I? Escanor. For the times that he was on screen though, those became some of my favourite moments in all of anime. The cockiness, bravado, and ego he emitted also made him extremely charismatic and fun to watch, let alone the fact that he had the ability to back it up. I feel like a more modern example of this would be Gojo from JJK. But it's when you see characters challenge a person like Escanor or Gojo, you say to yourself, "Boy, you done fucked up!" And when you see said character get absolutely obliterated, you can't help but be hyped. And Eleceed is very much the same. There are so many times when Caden shows up and everybody shits themselves because, well, it's Caden fucking break. Now look, I'm not gonna lie to you, as Eleceed goes on, our favourite smug furball Caden kinda turns into a walking Deus Ex Machina. What started off as an exciting, oh damn Caden's here moment, slowly morphs into a, G's in trouble again, time for daddy to swoop in. It's no longer wish fulfillment. It's just a custody battle between GU and plot consequences, and Caden has full legal custody. So yeah, I can't guarantee that you'll be as starry-eyed about Eleceed at chapter 250 as you were when you first got suckered in by the premise of a cat whose human form makes you question both your sexuality and whether or not it's bestiality. That said, let's not kid ourselves. This isn't some hidden gem I dug up from the crusty corners of the internet. Eleceed is massive among manhwa readers. The only plot twist is that barely anybody outside that bubble knows it exists. Like seriously, search up on YouTube. You'll find maybe 3 videos, a couple of reaction videos, and a lot of Caden thirst traps. Which is weird because for a series this big, the internet is oddly silent about it. But hey, what do I know? I made one banger video on manhwa and then pulled a Houdini for 3 years. So clearly I'm very qualified to speak on the state of the genre. Still, if you're just dipping your toes into the world of manhwa for the first time, I genuinely think that Eleceed is an amazing starting point. It's fun, accessible, and the kind of series that hooks you in before you realize it's 3 AM and you're 80 chapters deep. And for those of you who are fans of the series, yes, I probably didn't do Eleceed the justice it deserves in this video, but let's be honest, I still did more justice than this fucking cover. I mean, why does it look like that?